All right, so I am going to make a standing offer for the National Review Institute that if we're ever at an event and there are tech problems when that video goes out, I will just recite the whole video from memory. Because this is now, I believe, my fourth or fifth of these symposium events around the country that I've been blessed to speak at, and I definitely have the video memorized. I was backstage quoting it as we were coming. Thank you all for being here today. My name is David Bahnsen, and as Lindsay mentioned, I'm worried about my water falling here. I'm on the board of the National Review Institute, and I work here in New York City and in Newport Beach, California. I run a private wealth management firm getting close to $4 billion of client capital. And I eat, sleep, drink, breathe the message of free enterprise, which I consider to be one of the most important political but also spiritual messages of our day. The need to root a defense of liberty, in particular economic liberty, in transcendental truth. The book that we have here in the back for you, complimentary, is, I'm just going to get up on that water. It's a slanted podium situation, in case you're wondering why I can't handle holding a bottle of water. There's no free lunch, 250 economic truths, and I'll spare you now the time of when you get the book for free, joking about how it says there's no free lunch, but you're getting a book for free that I've heard the joke like 1,000 times since November. And it still continues to miss the point of what Milton Friedman meant by no free lunch, which is even if the book is free to you, it doesn't mean it was free to me. But the reality is that this book's message is essentially something that probably every single person in the room already agrees with. And I believe almost everybody who is kind of apolitical in modern American culture, but has a slight center-right bend, knowingly or unknowingly, on matters of the economy, of business, of the enterprise, of entrepreneurialism, probably is generally sympathetic to as well. The difference is that I think we're entering an era where the cause of a free society will not be adequately defended by our impulses, by our sort of natural instinct. Free markets deserve a natural instinct in America in favor of them because markets are judged by history, judged by logic and common sense, a better allocator of capital, a better distributor in a society of risk and reward. And that's essentially why most people like free enterprise. It seems more fair. There's a generally favorable idea of working harder, doing better, and so forth, at least from the people in this room and a lot of people out in American society. I did not write the book because the radical left is coming after that way of thinking. And I always say this, and I mean it every time I say it. If I thought I could give this book to a Senator Bernie Sanders or a Congresswoman AOC and change their mind, like if there's a quote from Friedrich Hayek they hadn't read, and my spot-on commentary about that quote that they could read and all of a sudden have a light bulb go on and say, you know what, this free market stuff is pretty good, we've been headed down the wrong path. I would love that. But I don't believe that the radical left are the people in need of an education. They have a very legitimate, in the case of Sanders more than AOC, quite thoroughly vetted process that they've come to lead to a really significant progressive left-leaning understanding of markets. I think AOC's fans have not necessarily been intellectually convinced of market. She's just very good in her presentation and kind of the pop culture at achieving a connection with people. But I don't think there's so much cerebral in their anti-market views, but I think Sanders is. But see, my concern is to prosecute the case for a free society into the future. I don't think that the right is fully committed to first principles. I don't believe that they're not committed. I just don't think it's been adequately considered intellectually. Do we have the foundations in place to defend free market principles from the onslaught? And my argument is that throughout economic history, particularly since the kind of advent of classical economics, The classical economics school of thought was just debating for a long time. When Marx came around, there was a vigorous debate. We go into the 20th century, and most of the debates then were intramural. We had kind of Austrians versus monetarists and so forth. But until you really saw the Keynesian school permeate government and a kind of softer form of central planning take root in the pillars and the commanding heights of the economy, for the most part, the 20th century was a radical condemnation of Marxism and socialism, and a softer form of central planning took root in the latter portion of the 20th century. But during the Reagan years, there was quite a popular relationship between young people and free markets. Everybody was doing very well. It just didn't seem natural to say you were anti-market and American in the 80s. And yet, what I think has happened in the last 20 years, it has not changed the nature of the debate in terms of issues or principles. But pragmatically, we hear this over and over and over again. I can look around the room and see, for the most part, you're not in this demographic. But we talk about these young, dumb socialists, and all these people in their 20s, and they say 53% of them hate capitalism. And I don't have an insulting or condescending attitude to those young people. I really don't. And the reason, I think they're young and dumb, but I don't have an insulting attitude. I think that they are living in an era that has been bookended by the financial crisis and COVID. And that in that period of time, they went from the entire housing market, credit market, banking market, essentially collapsing, to where mom and dad lost half the value of their homes. And now here they are, they graduated college, a lot of them have worked hard, they thought they'd done what they're supposed to do, and they can't even come close to affording to buy a somewhat mediocre home. You have, on one hand, had everything fall apart in value, and now you have things so high in value it's unaffordable. We know about the student debt situation. I could go on and on with different examples, but generally we use GDP to capture an economic story. I don't think it's perfect, but just for time's sake, GDP is growing at 1.6% a year for 15 years. 15 years. It wasn't because of one recession. It's in post-crisis, averaged half of its post-World War II real economic GDP growth. It's not about inflation. It's not about financial crisis. It's not about COVID. That 1.6 number was the number pre-COVID as well. During President Trump's administration, we had 1 year that hit just right at the 3% number, and that was considered this huge victory, which it was, relatively speaking. So we are living in an era, globally, but I'm only focused right now on America, of incredibly mediocre economic growth. So the story of markets and their incredible victory for centuries is being diluted by certain conditions in the here and now. Now, I have an answer, in my opinion, for why that is, why we have subpar economic growth. I believe that we, and those at National Review Capital Matters, those of you, probably a lot of you in the room, there's a sort of like-minded readiness to go say what the right policy might be on housing, on sound money, on student debt, so forth and so on. What I'm saying is we're living in an era where the argument is going to require both mind and heart, and I believe that what I'm trying to get to in the concept of there's no free lunch is a defense for the heart of markets that is rooted in the human person. This is the way that markets have not been described on the right for a long time. The advent of secular rationalism and the fact that the bulk of the great economists of the 20th century were not, in fact, believers in certain transcendent truths, made us rely on the efficiency argument for markets, which I entirely accept anecdotally. But I think fundamentally, us understanding the human person as the more enlightened creature made by a creator in his image, with an incredible capacity for productivity. And that framing an argument in favor of markets around that human person's capacity for innovation, for productivity, for creativity, for growth. A growth agenda that is not primarily defined by policy, but rather defined by anthropology, that human being, what they were made for. From there, of course, their incredible economic principles, laws, if you will, that we extract that are universal. And so I believe that we have a lot of work to do that previously was work we could take for granted. And that work in defending a free society will, in fact, require us to make the case not only to Bernie and AOC in the future, but I think many people that previously would have identified as defenders of free enterprise. I believe there will be a significant movement, and if I'm being very honest, I think this is already underway. A significant movement of people who've decided to become market skeptical, even on the right. We've had various divisions on the right over the years in social issues. I wish we hadn't. We've had various divisions in the right over the years on foreign policy. I wish we hadn't. Primarily, we really have been kind of unscathed on the economic side. Maybe differences of degree, but not of kind. What level of social safety net we wanted, what level of deficits we could tolerate. There's always been, in the details, some granular divide on the right about matters of economic policy. But as a governing framework, we've generally been in unison of being defenders of the concept of a free society. And I think that that is going to change, and I think it's going to change in ways that very few of us are prepared for. What I mean by prepared for is being intellectually armed with why we believe what we believe about markets, about a market economy. So that's the purpose of the book. It's frankly the purpose of my life. I'm very blessed to work in financial markets for a living and every day work with real life business owners, entrepreneurs who are out doing the business of America, as Coolidge said, which is business. And yet, I refuse to do what so many of my friends in this city have done, which is climb up a ladder of financial markets and free enterprise, kick the ladder over, and then sit there and pretend they have no idea how they got to the rooftop. And we have no moral claim on the future of this country if we will not defend things like a free enterprise society. So that defense, both intellectually and morally, is the cause of this book, but I would argue the cause of the next few decades that hopefully God will give me. So I understand that I now get to be cross-examined thoroughly by one far intellectually superior to myself. I'm going to invite her up, and we're going to sit down with a discussion on this book and this topic. Thank you very much.
Hi everyone, it's great to be here. I'm Veronique Derugy. I'm at the Mercator Center, and I don't think I'm far superior than you. In fact, I actually think that I may be the cause, all on my own.